Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Back now to our top story, a grim reminder on the costs of war. 2 U.S. service members killed yesterday defending against an Iranian missile and drone attack on a base in Jordan. They are the first combat deaths in the Iran conflict since the war's early days in March. A third service member is reportedly missing in action. 4 others were hospitalized and have now been released. Let's bring in West Virginia Republican Congressman Riley Moore. He's a member of the House Appropriations Committee. Congressman, I've seen the statement that you put out asking people to join you and your wife in praying for the families of those fallen service members. What do we do now regarding the Iran conflict?
Well, John, thanks so much for having me on. I think one of the interesting things, and I've just seen kind of breaking news on this, was the precision in which they were able to strike sensitive targets within Jordan. And the reporting is indicating that perhaps China or Russia was feeding them targeting information. Now, we need to get to the bottom of that, particularly if we're talking about China, on the back of the news that the president just broke and declassified about them stealing over 200 million voter files from the United States and obviously interfering in our election where they were trying to influence through media campaigns or social media people's perceptions and how they were ultimately going to vote. China is our adversary. We need to make this very, very clear. This is one of the reasons last year I introduced a bill to eliminate all student visas for China. Why are we training and educating our enemies to then work to destroy us? It doesn't make any sense at all. And this is why the president has implemented tariffs on them and tried to pull back our industry from China. So we need to get to the bottom of this. But where do we go from here, though, is also looking at how we're going to work with those GCC partners in the region, because this could tip over, hopefully not, could tip over into a regional destabilizing conflict, which nobody wants that. But some of these folks in the region there really need to step up and think about their own interest in this as well.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on More War Monday. We're live on Worldview Tube and X Spaces simulcast. Well, these are disturbing, very disturbing reports, but not surprising. China is now likely providing Iran with targeting intelligence used to attack our forces in the region. The CCP is actively helping the Iranian regime go after Americans. Some people say that's a serious escalation we cannot ignore, but I say it's already there. It's been there. The United States is hitting back with precision and purpose. In recent days, our military has conducted strikes targeting bridges, roads, and key infrastructure around Iran's critical port of Bandar Abbas on the Strait of Hormuz. The goal is clear: isolate the IRGC, cut off their supply lines, and break their grip on one of the world's most important choke points and their grip on the country's people that want freedom anyway. At the same time, we are making it crystal clear that commercial ships in international waters will not be attacked, peaceful agreement or not. Freedom of navigation has to be protected. We've done it since our beginning. Our first president protected commercial shipping. As Secretary Rubio has said, Iran is a rich country. Yet this despicable regime takes every dollar it gets from oil or anywhere else and pours it into Hezbollah, Hamas, and other terrorist proxies instead of building a future for its own people. And by the way, kills over 50,000 of its own population in the last 6 months, too. That's why the country of Iran is in a shambles. And enough is enough. It's time to finish the job and eliminate the IRGC threat once and for all. We can't let them have nukes. To break all this down with unmatched authority is my guest today, senior geopolitical strategist, drone expert, author of Veritas Vincent, A Soldier's Perspective on Truth, Faith, Family, and Freedom, and a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and helicopter pilot, I might add, Darren Gobb. Colonel Gobb has spent years in the Middle East combat zones and brings real-world expertise, which is what we need right now to understand what's going on. Darren, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Hey, Rob. It's always a pleasure to join you and talk to your audience about things that matter. That's for sure. There's certainly lots of things out there that don't matter, but it's great to be here.
There are. As a matter of fact, guys, my audience knows that I don't pitch books unless I've got them and read them. It's over my right shoulder. Your book is, because people need to go buy it. You're a great author, and I appreciate what you wrote in that.
Well, thanks, Rob. And I did return the favor, of course, because over your left shoulder is the next book I'm reading.
Awesome. I hope you're enjoying it. To the American people out there, both these books you can get on Amazon. And I wrote my book because I hear a lot of people say every day, Darren, well, what can I do about it? I'm just one person. Well, I wrote a book about that. Go buy that thing, folks. And the first answer is it's because you're an American. And we believe that any of us can do anything to fix things in our society or even the world, quite honestly. All right, so let's talk China, less or so Russia, but Russia too, and their intelligence services. There's been a lot of reporting that because they were able to hit IMSAB in Jordan and specifically hit an area where they could kill Americans, that the Iranians got some specific intelligence from China or Russia, probably China. How realistic is that a report, do you think, considering today's state of technology?
Well, Rob, I can't sit here and say 100% that it happened because I don't have that information in front of me. And if I did, then that would be the problem. But I will say that it is certainly feasible. And part of the reason why is because even at the end of February, beginning of March, I'd already gone on personally onto the media and talked about how there was specific Chinese support to targeting and electronic. And, basically they had a giant vacuum cleaner down there taking the entire signals intelligence world and sucking it in and analyzing it for whatever they could get of use out of it. And so when you know that in combat, the enemy has a vote, and they always do, whether you like it or not, sometimes when they're helped, then it makes things like this possible. And of course, this is an air defense site. And the people involved, of course, who were killed, obviously unfortunate. And we do pray for their families, and we pray for all those who are still there and serving in harm's way. But these kinds of reports, there's always the question of, is it a fact that this is what happened? And on the other side of it is it possible based on what we already do know? I put it fully in the bucket of it is most certainly possible, given how much China has been helping Iran, because Iran is a proxy of China as much as Hezbollah is a proxy of Iran. That's how this works. And it's how it's worked with Russia, too, for a long time. We're just fortunate in some ways that Russia is heavily distracted with Ukraine. Otherwise, they would be a lot more behind Iran than they are currently capable of.
Yeah, and the reason I said I wasn't surprised by this and have thought they've done it for a long time is because we do that for Ukraine. We've been feeding Ukraine, not just targeting intelligence, but doing their operational planning for them, and giving them feedback on their successes and failures and those kind of things. So nobody
we can tell people, we could, if we wanted to, sit here and tell people where that's happening.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And I think we talked about after the combat search and rescue mission, the successful CSAR mission, we talked a little bit about potentially China providing information on the location of that guy on the ground, potentially to the IRGC forces, because they were closing in on him, if I remember our conversation. Do you think, like the reporters are saying, that this is a massive escalation? Because they now think China's involved when we've known it all along.
Yeah. Welcome to years ago to those of us who have been involved in this behind the scenes for a long time. Is it a massive escalation? I wouldn't say so. I would say that this is a target. They shot the target. They managed to get through however they did, and the consequences are what they are. I would ultimately, though, I think the better answer is that this doesn't change the course for us. We have to keep going with what we're doing, with where we are now, at a minimum, and seriously consider how we would expand this to be more effective in setting the conditions for the Iranian people to take their own country back in a way that is realistic. Because let's face it, also, the Iranian diaspora will tell you, the people who are in the resistance forces that are inside Iran, and oh, by the way, who are those few who are left in places like Iraq and Jordan and Syria and Lebanon, will say that we, the United States and the West in general, have left them hanging more than a few times, which is why they're in no hurry to move now. I think we can send that message better now than we've ever been able to in the past. And it goes back to your statement about the IRGC, because they've largely really gone untouched. It's been drones, missiles, nukes, launch facilities, manufacturing, and things like that. IRGC is just sitting there going, well, rather large police force that hasn't been attacked yet.
Yeah, I mean, other than the initial rounds of leadership strikes, which I believe the Israeli Air Force is helping us a lot with, people side of this really haven't been targeted that much. It's all been about the capability, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I don't think very many Americans understand what we would call the order of battle for Iran, and how much stuff they've built up over since the revolution. And that's a big reason why we have a hard time accurately displaying in public why there's so much work left to do.
Yeah, because, I mean, we've annihilated the air forces and 99%, well, all of the conventional surface fleet and most of the subsurface fleet. I think we've attributed, by last count, our guesstimate is about 50% of their 20 micro submarines that they use for mining. And I think they can fire a torpedo. But the ground forces, we really haven't done that much work against, from what I can tell, other than the guys that are running the integrated air defense systems, the ballistic missile firing, the launchers and delivery of the missiles themselves, storage locations, those kind of things. But we haven't hit their ground forces much at all, have we?
No, they've been largely untouched. And that's not exactly a mistake. It's not like we forgot the IRGC is there and we don't think they're a valuable target. But I think you and I both could sit here very easily and describe to people how you take the primary threat first.
Yeah.
And, what were those primary threats? Well, you got to break this out of the borders of Iran and say, what is a regional threat? Well, the regional threats are the nukes, the ballistic missiles, the ability to affect the Gulf Coast nations and the Strait, and those things that reach beyond the borders. The IRGC, as horrible as it is and as much of a lucrative target as it is an internal police force. It's really not going to turn around and hurry up and go try to invade Iraq or something like that. And that's why they're still there untouched, is because the primary threat got taken out. The integrated air defense systems had to go first. I mean, what's the message that we're not sending verbally, but everybody should be able to pay attention to and understand now? The important thing is, about every single day, almost within a few minutes of each other, you get the report that Americans striking Iranian targets again. Well, that tells you what you need to know about the airspace right now. We own it. We can go in there at the same time, every single time almost, and be like, there's very little threat. You don't want to say no threat. There's always something. And you got to act like that 100% of the time. But, that's the message, is that we're able to go in there with impunity And if we seek to expand this into the IRGC targets and those militarily valuable targets like bridges or power plants or things like that, then we'll do so. We've actually been a model of restraint, probably more than any of us would.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the next segment because we have hit some bridges recently, and we'll see where they're at here shortly. We'll be right back with retired Army Colonel Darren Gobb, helicopter pilot, drone expert. We're talking the facts on Iran. Just the facts, man. Just the facts. We'll be right back.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
And the war planners here at the White House are trying something different. They started bombing overnight roads and bridges around Bandar Abbas. We have a map that we can put up. The U.S. is trying to take out these bridges and roads, hoping to isolate the IRGC so they cannot resupply their people near Bandar Abbas, which is the key to controlling the Strait of Hormuz. We have a different map of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This one is a pinch point of the Red Sea, and the Iranians are trying to get one of their terror group proxies, the Houthis, to cut that one off. And experts are saying even a few small attacks there could be severely disruptive to global shipping.
Well, look at how bad they are behaving. It just proves the president's initial point for launching Operation Epic Fury in the first place. Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. They have expressed they still want to make a deal to the president. We're talking to them, but again, the president is not going to allow them to fire on ships in the Strait without paying a consequence for that.
And the fact that the Iranians are now engaging, trying to activate one of their terror proxies to disrupt shipping in a different part of the world means that they are violating yet another part of that memorandum of understanding, the part that says they cannot engage with their terror proxies. So it seems like there are at least some elements within Iran who are trying to force President Trump's hand as he sits in the White House right now and decides whether or not he should escalate the war or go back to talks. Brian.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on World YouTube and our X Spaces simulcast, and it's More War Monday. My guest today is retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb, who spent a lot of time in the Middle East, like a lot of us have, in the last 25 years that we're in uniform. Darren, in the early days of this new round of full air tasking orders, ATOs is what we call them, folks, we started hitting bridges in the north, crossing the northern borders of Iran, because we knew coming from China and Russia to some extent through the Caspian seaport that they were getting resupplied and reconstitution supplies for their forces that we had hit already through that direction. But now we're going through and knocking the bridges down around Bandar Abbas and those kinds of things. And what are we doing? Some kind of slow strangulation on their supply lines?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a logical next step. That it makes perfect sense. I mean, and, you know, it was interesting. My phone rang about 15 minutes after the first bomb dropped back in February, and I was asked to come on overnight news and stuff and start talking about this, and started laying out what I expected, basically in military language, of the phases of how this would probably look. And this is totally expected right now, because as we started out talking about hitting the higher priority targets first in order to give you the freedom of maneuver and movement moving forward to do whatever you needed to do as the situation changed. Now, this is what you're going to do. This is a war now of economy and energy. And the two, of course, are basically hand in hand. In order to make sure that they don't have the economy to pay their IRGC, for example, and to take away the leverage they have over the energy piece, to hurt the world's economy by trying to stop energy from flowing, while also stopping them from using any kind of income to keep the IRGC going and any other supply lines going. We're just going to cut them off. And it takes a long time for the economic effects of things that you're doing to be realized. And bridges are one way to do that. Okay, you can't get resupplied by keep bridges going north. Oh, by the way, also through ports off the Caspian Sea, as you mentioned. That one went early. Where else? To the east, as you go into China, as they've circumvented some things by moving stuff by rail. Every single thing you take out that accomplishes the objective of further isolating Iran is only going to make it more likely that we will continue to have the effects we want on them. We just, to an extent, have to be patient and let that economic side of it play out. I personally think that besides the bridges part, whether they be rail or vehicle or whatever they might be, that you need to really start going after command and control headquarters of the IRGC, maybe cantonment areas where they have certain capabilities, and start whittling that away too, because that's how the Iranian people will be able to see the effect we're having right in front of them on the forces that have their thumb over top of them in the first place. And second of all, when you do that, you don't know if you're just going to hit something perfect that exposes something like an arms room. And people can suddenly have access to weapons, even if it's on a small scale. And those things get out into the public. And maybe you're going to find some of those rogue elements who say, I'm only here for the economic benefits and make a living for my family, but I'm not a hardliner. So now I'm going to see where this is going and become part of the next solution and go to my allegiance is Iranian, not to the the hardline elements of the dictatorship. But ultimately, it comes down to isolate them and then empower the best we can those resistance elements within the country and maintain a cap on the threat to the region the best you possibly can.
Yeah, you mentioned that we've been remarkably restrained at the end of the first segment here. What did you mean by that?
The entire timing of the memorandum of understanding and giving them 60 days to work under that is 60 days of them continuing the deceit that they always intended to use that time to regain some sort of strategic advantage, to influence our midterm elections, potentially to harm the West economically in general. Both of these, by the way, have time limits on them to where they can truly affect that because of other things going on around the world that have been put in place. But sometimes, as you know, wars is about momentum. And we maintained that, and then we stopped it. And I don't want to discredit the president and his team and what I think they're trying to do of trying to get Iran to the table, trying to take advantage of an opportunity to see if this can be solved peacefully. If they went into that eyes wide open and kind of knew that was just never going to happen with Iran and the kind of people who run it ideologically, I would say that 60 days was probably too much in the first place. And recognizing what Iran is means that the less time they get, the better, because they're never going to deal in good faith. They're never going to come to the table, and they'll kill everybody in Iran before they surrender to us.
Yeah, that's my belief too. I mean, I'm willing to give this president in particular, let him give it. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that if anybody's got a shot at cutting some kind of deal that the American people could live with these monsters, it'll be him and his team. And I think Vance has stayed true to that, and the team that the president's got around him, those kind of things. But, my instinct is like yours. I just don't think they don't have it in them to be honorable people. They just don't. Anyway, we've got a question from the audience. Let's go ahead and take that one. Go ahead, Shel.
We have AJ, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Colonel Manus. Colonel Dobbs, it's a pleasure, sir. My question is from a military standpoint. Do you expect China to continue to back Islamic Republic of Iran militarily until the last moment, or do you expect them to pivot at some point, cut Iran off so that they can just maybe hide behind a narrative that's parallel to, hey, these weapon shipments have been contracts that were signed years ago, and we're just fulfilling them, and ideologically we have no dog in this fight. Your opinion is appreciated, sir. Thank you.
Hey, AJ, thanks. That's a great question. I believe that China is one of those countries that is your friend until they're not. And what makes them not the friend of Iran is when Iran can no longer supply them with the energy needs they have, when they can no longer be a threat to America that would distract us as America from Iran, because frankly, using Iran like a proxy means China can operate more freely while we're engaged with Iran and their forces. So in the end, I think at a certain point, if this trend continues and Iran looks like it's actually going to fall through internal pressure, external pressure, or a combination of the above, China would step away from it and realize they've used him for the maximum they can get out of him, and they're going to move on. They're friends of convenience, not friends of ideology.
Yeah, their primary source of oil for about 20% of their oil that they import, the Chinese, comes out of Iran.
Mm-hmm. And you add that to Venezuela that got cut off. China's in a bad spot.
China is in a bad spot, and the Iranians bought their missile systems, and they can no longer pay them.
Yeah. They're also proving that those missile systems are really not very effective.
Yeah, as we come to the end of this segment, that's a great question to segue into, is from a strategic perspective, what do you think the impact is from the global strategic adversary versus friend versus peer perspective is now that these weaknesses in the Chinese integrated air defense system, missiles and radars, for instance, have been shown twice?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, to say the least, the lessons that are going to be constantly learned by way of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, the Iranian conflict. Certainly, this will consume an entire segment pretty easily, combined with the who's your friend, who's your enemy history of, from Iran all the way to the Mediterranean. Love to get into that with you if you want to go down that road, for sure, as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to get into that. And I want to get into, in the next segment, tap into your expertise in the drone world. There's a new pamphlet out on the U.S. side on drone warfare that I've seen. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But there's been a lot of drone activity on both sides of this conflict. And, of course, the Ukraine-Russia one is really right at the leading edge of drone warfare as we know it today. So we'll be right back with Darren Gobb on More War Monday here. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial scale systems to whole house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required.
perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
Well, the plan, we needed 4 to 6 weeks for military actions. They went for 5.5 weeks. We did a pause to try to get an agreement with the Iranian people to allow oil to flow without them attacking it. They've proven unwilling to do that, and we've pivoted. Now what we're doing is assuring that oil and gas and other products can flow through the Strait of Hormuz with or without Iranian cooperation. And we've continued to degrade their offensive military capabilities. The president is always looking for the diplomatic off-ramp. President Trump wants to end it with a peaceful agreement with Iran, but it takes two parties to do that. If they're ready to do that, that's the way it'll end. If not, we will continue to assure flow of traffic through the strait without Iran's cooperation.
Energy Secretary Wright there discussing the big picture on what's going on with Iran, and the sub goal strategically has to be keeping the strait open, not for the United States to get oil because we don't need it anymore, but it impacts the strategic and global oil market and other markets like fertilizer and those kind of things. But there's another thing. The mission of the United States Navy, the original mission was to protect international waters and commercial shipping because the Muslims in North Africa were attacking our ships and capturing them and charging tribute and enslaving the American crews and those kind of things. So my guest today is Army Lieutenant Colonel retired Darren Gobb, who has spent a lot of time here and has looked at these problems. And Darren, I think from a geostrategic perspective, the Strait of Hormuz is under attack. You saw in the very opening segment somebody talking about the Houthis and the strait going into the Red Sea, potentially being blocked, although the Houthis have been remarkably quiet this entire time. I think we heard them last year and the year before when we pummeled them when they were attacking shipping, and they're thinking twice, more than likely, about coming up for air and trying to shoot anybody again. That's my opinion. But all of that said, you mentioned earlier, it is about the energy market and the free flow of goods and international waterways being free to navigate.
Well, it is. And I guess I would say that the energy is the tool for the radical Shia Islamists to try to build the house, I guess you could say, that they're really trying to achieve. And what does that look like? And it goes back to the history, and it's not that long of a history. I mean, when you opened up, you were talking about the Barbary pirates in Tripoli and the reason why the Marine Corps song is the Marine Corps song and all that. Yeah. But more recently, if we ask the question, really, what are we trying to prevent, or should we have been trying to prevent for quite some time? That answer is a little bit different because we're so zoomed in on the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf, depending on which country you're in, and the strait and the energy that comes through that. But that's kind of, in my opinion, still a little bit myopic or nearsighted to what we've been trying to or should have been stopping the whole time. So what does that look like, to be very simple? Well, Tehran's goal, which, by the way, was accelerated under the Obama administration, was basically to recreate the Orient Express, but of terrorism. What does that look like? It means they wanted to put a pin in Tehran, run it through Baghdad, into Damascus, out to Hezbollah in Lebanon, into the Mediterranean coast, and solidify that as essentially a Shia terrorist-centric caliphate. And by securing all of that, which, by the way, they got very close to doing, they could then move south, and we wouldn't be talking about trying to free up the Strait of Hormuz. We would already be talking about how the Suez Canal is fully under the control of these radicals, which would likely mean that part of Egypt had an issue as well, or at least the Sinai Peninsula. And you can keep breaking that out to how far were they reaching and how far did they want to get. Well, they were reaching out as far as Libya, and they were essentially trying to consider ways how they could threaten as far down all the way to Yemen and including controlling Saudi Arabia, who is, by the way, their Sunni strategic opposition in the region as well, which is why they're a good ally of ours. Not perfect, but a good ally, trying to maintain, I guess, the balance of power and keep their position within the Middle East too. So what we're lucky today that we're not talking about some version of a caliphate who has a chokehold on two major waterways and transit points of the world's energy supplies, which is why energy would be the tool for the radicals to build what they wanted to in the greater Central Asia and the Middle East. Now, that doesn't leave you a whole lot of other waterways left to deal with. You got the Panama Canal, you got the South Pacific, and that's about it.
Yeah, because if they had taken Libya, that's not I mean, that would give them three. The Suez Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, and then Gibraltar, controlling the entry.
They would have gone all the way to Madagascar if they had the opportunity to cut that too.
Yeah, yeah. From a Russian and Chinese perspective, with these guys in Tehran being as unreliable as they are, do you think the Russians and Chinese think that helps them, or status quo, or might actually hurt them if they were to get control of all of that?
Well, in the end, friends of convenience, right? And Iran could have changed their mind too relative to China, and suddenly China's getting cut off by Iran in general. The question is what happens first, because Iran needs the Chinese money. Russia doesn't as much because they've got Europe to buy their energy supplies. And again, history is a great teacher, and if we're not learning those lessons, we'll just keep repeating them. So we had the opportunity to turn Russia into an ally after the Cold War ended and pull them into the orbit. And what could and should have happened then was we were working together against the greater threat of that jihadist world that Russia was working against, by the way, in the Caucasus regions and elsewhere. Russia is less impacted. They're worried about the access to energy, their access to the warm ports, the things they've always wanted, their influence over Turkey and Iran in order to keep the economies going there. China was definitely reliant on Iran as an energy exporter to, as you said, 20% of their oil, which their economy requires, because China's got about 2 weeks of oil at any given time. They're very close at all times to not having that, and their economy suffering as a result. But I think they'll use Iran as a proxy as long as they can, because they think by doing that they're reducing our readiness and distracting us and trying to potentially causing that two major wars at one time scenario that they don't think America can handle. That's up for debate. And until such time as maybe they realize that what they have is not as good as what they thought they had. And China is more of an ideological threat than it is a physical military threat.
True. How do you explain, I don't know if you saw it or not, I saw it this morning, that China has been reported that China has threatened us over Cuba. Have you seen that reporting?
Yeah. What was their threat to Cuba?
They've threatened us over Cuba to not, do anything. I know they have a lot of installations there and capability that they moved in over the last couple of years. But they don't. It doesn't seem to me they're threatening from a position of strength these days after everything we've talked about this hour.
Well, no, they're not, and they know they're not, which also kind of makes them more dangerous too, because that makes people like them lash out easier and quicker when they think that they're losing the position of strength and can no longer operate from there. And if they're as strong as they're going to be, they could make the decision that now is when they have to go, whether they're ready or not. It doesn't surprise me that they would threaten us over Cuba, because that is an ideological tie, the same kind that Russia had when to be more accurate, the Soviet Union, of course, had when Cuba was communist. And so now it's China and Cuba are communist. And look at what China has been losing from an ideological influence perspective, not only because of what we think we might accomplish in Cuba, but look at the election results in places like Bolivia, Argentina, Paraguay. I mean, all these countries in South America that are frankly turning away from communism fairly quickly, they're losing their foothold in our hemisphere almost altogether. So it's natural that they would threaten us over one of the last places they have left.
Yeah, seems like we're winning everywhere. Turning back to the Iran war and the region there, and drone. Let's turn to drone warfare. We have seen a lot of drone usage. The first CSAR effort of a surface vessel drone on the United States side, picking up 2 helicopter crew members, if I remember right. The Iranians obviously are using drones to hit the ships, the commercial shipping that's out in the Strait and the Arabian Gulf and those areas, and then we see the potential for additional drone warfare coming, leaking out of the test lab of Ukraine and Russia, and Anduril just released a video of what it's calling Thunder, which is a concept of attack helicopters having Osprey type drones carrying weapons for defensive purposes as part of an air package to do ground attack. I don't know if you saw that here in the last couple hours, but that's pretty amazing. What's starting to come out publicly, which tells me we've gone down a road pretty far if we're able to start talking about these things and demonstrating it on the battlefield. What do you see over the next 5 years from this perspective of drone warfare? Things change.
Yeah, a lot of change, and a lot of that happening very quickly. And I guess to get a sense of, again, the timing for personally with this topic is, if you were to go onto Amazon and type in my name in The Children of Aphrodite, up would pop a master's thesis that I wrote in 2010, talking about the threat and proliferation of specifically unmanned aerial vehicles. But the intent was also to get at the fact that this is going to define the modern battlefield, and autonomous warfare is going to be a significant part of conflicts in the future. And so here we are, 16, almost 17 years later. I'm one of the few people in history who gets to watch their thesis play out in real life right in front of them. And because one of the central points of that was, at that time, that America wasn't thinking down that road far enough to be prepared to deal with the threat of drones from a proliferation standpoint and many other aspects. And I used the threat of China as a state actor. I used drug gangs on the southern border as a non-state actor. And then I used the natural proliferation of those who led the technology initially, which frankly was Israel, and how that has spread around the world. And so that applies to land, sea, and air. Robotics on ground, subsurface waterborne threats, on-surface waterborne threats, because if we make them, others can learn to make them too. And one of the unique things about this that Russia and Ukraine, that conflict is proving, is that you can create an entire defense industry with extreme lethality for pennies on the dollar, using basement manufacturing techniques with basic chips and drone systems that can then be experimented with and rapidly move forward in technology to become what we're seeing today. Part of that thesis I wrote was the fact that what you saw with the advent of aviation in general in conflict in World War I was exactly the same thing as you saw with drones in the beginning. Lightweight, underpowered, thin-skinned, reconnaissance mostly only, that then grew into dropping very simple bombs and lightweight stuff, to growing into advanced fighter technologies, space technologies now, and on and on. That's just going to keep going. So what do I see over the years coming is that's going to accelerate even more, because you've got actual real world conflicts where these are turning into basically testing labs, much like Spain's Spanish Civil War was prior to World War II. And that's just going to keep accelerating. It's going to keep getting cheaper. And in some ways, it's going to equalize the lethality and cost of conflict to where the industrial nations lose some of our edge if we don't keep up with this. to smaller nations who can now create something that is extraordinarily effective and lethal for very small cost. Meanwhile, and this is getting rectified. We shouldn't be taking a $120,000 Hellfire missile to blow up a $10,000 drone on the ground or something like that. That just means you're draining the bank.
Exactly.
Your way. So that's what I see. I think this is going to be rapid proliferation, rapid technological growth, and rapid diffusion across multiple nations, regardless of whether you would consider them first, second, or third world.
Yeah, I agree. We got to take one more break. When we come back, we'll see a clip from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And believe me, folks, the diplomatic instrument of power is heavily engaged. Whether you think it's off the table or not with the MOU, it's still being heavily utilized because it's part of the strength of America is to be able to get people to stop doing something without having to kill a bunch of people to do it. We'll be right back with Darren Gobb.
Friends, this is Brandon Howes. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
I mean, Iran's economy is in shambles. They're 300% inflation, particularly on life-sustaining goods. They have dwindling revenues to meet even their own payroll. They have food shortages. They have a drought, which we didn't cause. But they have a gasoline shortage and a fuel shortage. All these problems existed before all of this began. They've just gotten worse. They will continue to get worse. And one of the reasons why Iran is in shambles, they're a rich country. Iran is a rich country. One of the reasons why Iran is in shambles is because every penny that this regime there gets, be it through sanctions relief or through the oil they're able to get out, they invested in Hezbollah. They invested in Hamas. They spent billions of dollars supporting militias in Iraq, Hezbollah, and Hamas. They should be spending billions of dollars supporting the people of Iran. They should be spending billions of dollars building the country. But instead, they use it to sponsor terrorism. So I think there's a growing awareness of that inside of Iran. And I think there's even a growing awareness of that among some of the people in their government. In fact, we have heard that from some of the people in their government. But obviously, there's a tension here, and we'll see how that plays out. I can't tell you how it's going to play out. It's up to them.
Welcome back to the Rob Maida Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X-Spaces simulcast. And it's More War Monday. My guest is retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Darren Gobb of authoring fame, Veritas Vincent there. You can see a copy of his book on my bookshelf behind me. Go to Amazon and get a copy of it. It's a very good book, and it tells you a lot about the American people and one of the things that soldiers think about quite often in this country. Secretary Rubio there, the engine noise was a little loud in my earpiece, but he was talking about the IRGC has got to feed their people, they got to house them. We're cutting them off through the blockade. We're cutting them off through the Treasury Department and their financials. But the thing we're not doing yet, and we talked about this throughout the show, is that we're not systematically attacking them, the people themselves that are in the IRGC and the besieged, the law enforcement part that tries to control the population and everything. We haven't systematically taken that apart completely, and I think that's where we need to go. What does that look like as we move forward? What can we expect to see in the types of attacks if we're going to do that?
Yeah, absolutely, sure. And what Rubio is just describing there, frankly, is that what you and I understand commonly as the four elements of national power under the acronym of DIME: diplomacy, information, military, and economics. And so whether it's gone perfectly or not, I think clearly we can argue that nothing ever goes perfectly. But this is one of the few times I've ever seen all elements right there lined up. And all of them being used in some way. We're going after them economically. We're engaging in the information space. Military is very obvious, and the economics, as we discussed, takes time. So if you're going to restrict that down to the, what does it look like to expand the campaign relative to the IRGC from a military-only perspective? And this goes back to the targeting cycle, how these joint targeting cells go through the intelligence picture. We know from our backgrounds that intelligence drives operations. So you got to have accurate intelligence to get effective operations. And we also have to have, by the way, what an end state looks like, because we all know that it would be a disaster to pretend like we could do a ground invasion into Iran, a nation of 90 million people and a 500,000 or so roughly IRGC, not counting the Basis militia forces and you name all those different elements out there. And so you got to strictly define that. But you, again, just like we went with priority targets overall with nukes, drones, air, ballistic missiles to start with, if you narrow it down to the ground elements of the IRGC, you have to go to priority targets there too. And it's not always equipment. If I were to go after the IRGC, I would start with every single headquarters I can find. And just decapitate the leadership that is there. Now, what that looks like specifically, I think you could look to the Israelis and to some of what we did to working with them and how effective that can be. There's a variety of ways to do it. But as you're doing that, because that doesn't take everything we have, you start looking at the next things that they need, specifically like ammunition storage, weapons capabilities, logistics capabilities. I mean, you're going to break this out. You're going to assign priorities to different targets and say, what is the weakness of an IRGC? And by the way, it's the same weakness that a lot of these dictatorial regimes have within the military, is that they are completely top-down driven.
Right.
When you get to a certain level, people are like, you're just going to hang up the uniform and walk away because they don't have what we have. And then that's not only just the ideas of initiative and discipline and the way Americans think. We have the non-commissioned officer corps, without which we wouldn't have a military. And they just don't have those kinds of things. So I think you decapitate the leadership. And when you've allocated assets to all of that as much as you possibly can, while leaving some flexibility to find things on the fly, because that's always happens, you start taking away their ability to logistically support themselves in the first place, primarily, yes, with ammunition, but also, by the way, with energy. Yeah, they're a nation that's a gas tank, essentially, but you still have to make it into gas. You still have to make it usable. And if you take away energy to include those power stations, if they're militarily valuable targets, you're just gonna cut them off at the knees by taking off the head.
Do you think I've been saying for a while that the more they can't pay their people, the more those people, some of the ones that have families, are going to be going, hey, we can't feed ourselves. Our houses are getting bombed, those kind of things. So it's not just hitting the leaders themselves, but hitting the people that would be occupying the NCO ranks, the mid-level men, so that they're feeling the pain, and their families are feeling the pain, right?
Yeah, you're going to find that if you take out the top leadership, that you have the ideologically driven people, that it doesn't matter what happens to them, they rely on those particular ideological pursuits. That is their priority. And as you take that out, now you get towards that more mid-level. I mean, people like you and I, the lieutenant colonels and colonels of the world, or the equivalent, the senior non-commissions, who are there to support their family. But they're not going to die for the ideology. They're not going to die for the Tehran mullahs that frankly, right now may or may not even really exist. I think Iran's being led by a picture frame. They may just hang up a uniform. And by the way, they could hang up their uniform and take their weapons and just go home. And so maybe in the best case scenario, you end up with a whole lot of people who are disenfranchised, who are willing just to take weapons or whatever they can get their hands on and say, okay, Iranian people, here's your chance. If you do that, next thing you know, you could be gaining the mass and the momentum to have something that could actually change their country from the inside on the ground, whether it be resistance forces that are your typical Iranian Shia types, or Persian, as we should say in that case, or the Kurds. I think best case, that's kind of what it could look like. Take away the money, take away the pay, take away the support, and they're going to lose interest very quickly at about the mid-range down.
I agree. One of the things I've noticed in the little cartoon maps that the media likes to show, because they steal them from PowerPoint slides that get leaked, is a lack of strikes in the central and western part of the country. We had some early reporting that the secondary and tertiary command and control nodes were out towards the Afghanistan border and those kinds of places. Should we be hearing about attacks in those areas, or was that like a red herring type of piece of information?
Well, I think it could be both, but and here's why. I think there are some things you could do that might be of value. And so some of the regions that you're talking about are like the Baluchistan region of eastern Iran that runs along the Pakistan border. But when you start talking about resistance forces and where they could originate from, if you were to take something that, like you described, which is basically PowerPoint level analysis in PowerPoint shallow, and really dig into who's there, and you carve out the Kurdish region, you carve out the Baluchistan region. Those are just two examples. There are others there. And those are that becomes, you're attacking potentially the very people who would be the ones who would lead that resistance offensive against the IRGC in the first place. Iran has a problem of geography too. It's very big. It's very mountainous. It's a big bowl between mountain ranges. They're surrounded by mountain ranges. They have their own strategic concerns too, not only with what we're doing. They've had water fights with Afghanistan. They've had border concerns with Pakistan. And so they're not without their issues. And so if we do this right, to where we don't bomb the wrong people or have the wrong effect by what we're doing, then you could end up with a whole bunch of people who realize suddenly that we are doing this more or less right, and they're actually willing to step up this time and do what they couldn't do in 2009 and 2019 when we left them hanging.
Yeah. Leaving folks hanging is the wrong way to be. But at the same time, I think we've got to prioritize helping the resistance fighters get their hands on more arms, so that when they are ready, and we've degraded the IRGC down enough to where the people think they can rise up and get the job done, that they have the capability there to do it.
Yeah. And this is why having Russia as an enemy or a foe right now hurts.
Absolutely right.
Where better would you move that stuff through?
Yeah. Unfortunately, wrong decisions were made, my friend. Yep. But I'm sure we'll be talking about this again because it's not over, although it could be over very closely if we take the restraints off. And I appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, Rob. Always fun to join you.
You bet. Well, folks, that was Darren Gobb. Find his book at Amazon, Veritas Vincent. And I would say go follow him on X, but Libs of Montana, I think he said he runs the page on X. Check that one out. I'm going to go check it out after this. And tomorrow's Training Tuesday. We're going to be talking to a person that is trying to save the daughters of the American Revolution from transgender ideology, if you can believe that. The DAR is letting men pretending to be women be members of the Daughters of the American Revolution. It's amazing. I'll see you then.